Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Alien. Today we are going to be talking about data ethics and ethics in general. Alien stands for Astrobiology Lessons for an Interdisciplinary Education Network, and we are so happy that you are listening to the conversations that are going to play out today. So, I'm Ariel. I'm a student at ASU, an undergraduate student studying data science and biology. Um, and I am here with my co-host, Izzy.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm a junior studying astrophysics.
Awesome. And today we are so lucky to have Dr. Laurence Schneider of ASU as our speaker. So he's an associate teaching professor in the School of Mathematical and Statistical Sciences at Arizona State University. He received a statistics and biometry degree from Cornell. He worked in the pharmaceutical and financial industries, and he also worked as a high school math teacher. Thank you for doing that. That is amazing. Um, as an instructor of data ethics course at ASU, he has imparted wisdom about ethical paradigms and applied ethics to countless students. And yeah, we're so excited to have you on the podcast, Dr. Schneider.
That's great. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So we can get started with our first question.
Perfect. So, what is data ethics?
So, data ethics is trying to make decisions about specific types of data using ethical methods. And there are ethical theories that you can use in order to do that. And in the class that I teach, there's 5 specific theories that I cover. Um, but you can use any of these theories to make a decision on whether a decision that's being made is ethical or not. And data ethics specifically is focusing on the use of ethics as a data scientist in industry.
And in terms of just what data scientists do, is there any way you could kind of expand on that?
Well, data scientists do a lot. It's pretty much a fairly broad um, topic right now. So, data science will include a lot of statistics, computer science, machine learning, and data scientists can do any or all of that. But it is really important as a data science to be able to not only manipulate the data and produce actionable items, but also understand the data as well.
Yeah, and I think like the data understanding comes with this ethical understanding. So I took this course from Dr. Schneider last fall, and it was very eye-opening for me because while I'd always been interested in ethics at like a surface level, the examples that we dove into and the debates we had were very specific to, like potential scenarios where you're collecting data or data is involved. So, but there are so many of those examples. So we'd have these panel discussions where we would talk about like a different topic each week, and like these topics ranged from like self-driving cars to um, employers using AI to hire employees and all this stuff. Data is involved in all of it. Um, and data is all around us in this very like technological age. So yeah.
And we also did a couple panel discussions on the ethical use of data in marketing, as well as data privacy issues. So it is all encompassing the field of ethics, especially in data science.
Yeah. And like, Izzy and I being interested in this sort of like space applied stuff, um, data is so inherent to all of that.
Mhm.
You know, Izzy, I'm sure you've had like labs where, I mean, everything is data-based and everything is about like correct reporting and being, honest and stuff like that. So, yeah. To kind of get more into that, um, Dr. Schneider, do you have a favorite ethics system? And why is that? And can it be difficult to choose one over the others?
So, my background is in statistics, and one of the things that I really like about statistics is that you can argue both sides of an issue just using statistics. So to answer your question, I probably don't have a specific favorite type of ethical theory. As I mentioned, there are five that I cover in class, but one that I usually find the most useful is utilitarianism, where you're trying to determine if something has more benefits versus harms, to make a decision on whether you should, make that decision and um, kind of move from there. So I kind of like using utilitarianism in the classroom as well, because whenever we're talking about specific issues, it's very easy to for students to kind of think of, okay, here's the benefits, here's the harms um, related to that specific issue.
Yeah, you can kind of lay it all out there and definitely come to a conclusion that probably most other people would like logically come to because you are doing
Hmm.
like a cost benefit analysis, which always rubbed me the wrong way about utilitarianism because like I very much am into this idea of like seeing every individual as like, an individual and sort of zooming in rather than zooming out. But I also know that it's so important to zoom out and see like what like reaps the most benefits for everybody. Izzy, do you have any like, you know, ideas on that topic of like, okay, so we have more benefits to like the the greatest number of people,
Hmm.
but but the harms that are occurring to the lower number of people are still bad. So like what, like what do you think about that?
I think my question was how, because it can be very subjective sometimes. So how do you determine like do you have a specific example of like what would you say the pros are? What would you say the cons are? And like how to distinguish those? Because I feel like there's a lot of situations where it's really hard to just get the black and white pros and cons. And there's like so much more nuance to it. So that was my question.
But in some cases, you can come up with the same issue on both sides, depending on what perspective it is. So, when you're looking at, for example, artificial intelligence in recruiting, you can come up with issues that will benefit the employer, which will not necessarily benefit the candidate. And then there are issues that would benefit the candidate, but not necessarily the employer. So when trying to make a decision, is the use of AI um, a good thing in recruiting? You kind of have to look at that list and then make a determination from what side are you trying to make the decision on, from an employer side or from a candidate side. So yes, you can put together this whole list, but again, it's based on the perspective of how you're trying to make the decision.
Yeah, I think like a big part of that too, Izzy, is like, I mean, what Dr. Schneider is talking about, like how like the way you approach something, but I'm also kind of thinking about like how well can you argue like the reasons that you think this is a pro, this is a con, and
Mhm.
if like your argument has fallacies or like logical gaps, it's probably going to be pretty obvious to people around you and hopefully to yourself. And I think that that's where we get like people in power just like with the most like skewed and like bent ethical systems because logic is not being used, right? Like it's all about logic.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Um, and like that's where, I mean, it seems very simple, but I think like that's where critical thinking comes in handy for
Hmm.
anybody. And
Hmm.
that's why critical thinking can't just be like pushed off to the side as something that takes work and can be automated. Like, so sorry, that's kind of me going on a little bit of a rant. Um, But yes, okay, I'll move on to the next little piece of this interview. So, just for some context, there are a couple really big ethical dilemmas in astrobiology. One of them is who gets to make contact with aliens first, and who gets to decide whether or not we make contact. So by this, I kind of mean like who's representing Earth to the universe, and it's most likely going to be like the most powerful people on the planet that are able to do this. And then, do we even want to represent ourselves to the universe? Could we be opening ourselves up to very dangerous threats? And then another problem is, should we tamper with other worlds if there's any chance life could be growing there? Like, could we disrupt something really important in a long process? Could we bring back something to Earth from like a place where, th like things probably shouldn't get back to us. And
Mhm.
like these are all like ethical dilemmas. So, Dr. Schneider, I'm interested to know, do you have any insights into the basic ethical components of these dilemmas? Do you have any opinions that you're already forming of your own about them?
So, my feeling about who should be representing us is probably aligned a lot with, have you ever seen the movie Contact?
Yes, yes. Izzy, have you seen that one? It's
Not
so
yet.
good.
Oh,
Oh, it's a great.
So good.
So, so it was, the movie was based on a book that was written by Carl Sagan, who was a very famous astronomer who actually went taught at Cornell, and I was actually able to see one lecture before he actually went on sabbatical to work at JPL. But the premise of the book and the story is that um, we need to have international representation, and it can't be it shouldn't be political. And until we can really get to a point where we can do things that are not necessarily where it is not about politics, but it's about just us. Um, I don't think you can really make a decision as to like who should go, because everything will be drawn along political lines.
Yeah, and
Is
like
that what you think?
in that film, like politics is so important, but it's also like the divide between like
Religion and
religion and science, which
yeah.
personally I've mentioned this on one of the previous episodes, but personally, as somebody who is like considers myself to be both religious and spiritual and um scientifically minded and a scientist and somebody who thinks that various facts about the universe are just non-negotiable.
Hmm.
Like the evidence is there. Um as somebody who kind of like honestly takes pride in sort of melding those things together and stuff like that. I don't think there's as big of a divide as a lot of people see. And in Contact, it's interesting because one of the characters is a full atheist, and he is completely, devoted to this idea or sorry, she is completely devoted to this
Right.
idea that there's no like higher power and, that sort of school of thought. And then the other character is very religious, and
Hmm.
he is um, sort of, I think he brings up Occam's razor at one point in the
Yeah.
movie where he says
Yeah,
like,
it does.
what's the simplest explanation that there's like a higher power that like snapped and things happened, or that like a very unlikely event occurred in which like a singularity and like all this stuff and then we sort of life sort of became possible in the universe and the universe was created through that. So it's like and our main character who's the atheistic person is like, I mean, okay, but like, my view is that, and they're able to have these pretty constructive conversations,
Hmm.
even though it is like butting heads. But the coolest thing about this is that both of them have to have faith by the end. Like
Right.
they um I think her name is Ellie. Ellie, our main
Yeah.
character, has to have faith in science, in, you know, like the evidence she's seen. And when she kind of has this experience with these aliens, nobody believes her. So, like, there's absolutely no way for her to say, "Oh, I actually had this experience." Um, she's relying on other people to believe her.
Hmm.
And so it's like, oh my gosh, like that's so interesting. And Carl Sagan, who I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is like an atheist, um, like really dove into these like very interesting intricacies between the two schools of thought that
Hmm.
can be pretty easily melded together if you think like anything that you believe or hold to be super true to yourself actually does require a little bit of faith because you are trusting in whatever you're sort of basing your view on. Super interesting.
Which again kind of goes to how you're ethically making your decisions. And so that's kind of where the ethics would get weaved in a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, it's a great movie though. If you haven't seen it, I would go see it. Yeah, I'm sure you can find it streaming somewhere on some platform. Um, but to your other question about should we kind of intervene in other worlds? Um, and again, this is my personal opinion. I don't think we've done such a great job with our own world that we really should be fiddling around with other worlds un un unless there is some international approach that's not political that would allow us to effectively gain something from this so that it's not just going to benefit one one country, one religion. It it would have to be something that would benefit everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, you also have the ethical consideration of like, what about, the other organisms that are out there that
Right.
we're interacting with? Um, if anybody has seen Star Trek, um, in the show The Next Generation, which I've seen way more than the original, I know that, and I don't know if this is in the original, but I'm sure it is. Fake fan over here, but but there's this ethical, like monolith, the Prime Directive, which is you do not interfere with like alien life, I believe, unless it's like just as advanced as you, and then you're not like messing up, a chain of events. Um, but like I think there are a couple episodes that sort of deal with this dilemma of, okay, well, these worlds are experiencing major catastrophes. These organisms are dying or at risk of dying, and we're not going to step in and help because like the prime directive says we shouldn't because we'd be messing stuff up and we'd
Hmm.
be, tampering with what we maybe shouldn't be. But also we're here and we have the resources to help. It's like what like
So, so how would you feel about a like a Jurassic Park situation?
oh my gosh, Jurassic Park. The ultimate. Okay. Um
The ultimate messing around.
yeah, that's kind of like the whole Prometheus thing as well.
Mhm.
I think that I mean, I love Jurassic Park so much, but like obviously I think it was very stupid to go around tampering with like dinosaur DNA and
Right.
creating dinosaurs because
Right.
obviously, Izzy, do you have something to add?
Hmm.
I was just saying it's a good movie for sure.
It's so good.
So what would you think about I'll ask the two of you. Um, NASA has actually has on the boards a spacecraft that's looking to go to Europa. Um, and because there's a very thick ice layer,
Right.
and scientists, astronomers have determined that there is the possibility of some form of life under the ice. So, how would you feel about um, a spacecraft going to Europa, digging through, and potentially bringing back, or I mean, once we dig in, we're meddling with another world.
Yeah, Izzy, you can go ahead.
Okay. Well, I've like read a lot about Europa and like why it might contain life, and I've
Mhm.
listened to a lot of grad students who like specifically work on that. And it's really hard. Everything except the drilling, like if we just sent something there just to get information, like pictures, the drilling is kind of where it crosses a line
Right.
for me because that's interfering in we don't know if it's going to be a good or bad way,
Hmm.
but I'm all for getting more information by sending spacecrafts and like getting pictures, like collecting data. But yeah, I would say the drilling part is where it crosses the line for me.
Yeah, because like not only could you, bring something back, but you could also damage whatever's
Hmm.
there. Because we don't like if we don't know anything about the potential organism, we don't know anything about what we're doing to potentially harm it. And that's one of the core ideas of astrobiology is that we don't know, we can't define life under an all-encompassing umbrella. Things are left out or too many things are put in.
Hmm.
There's, as of yet, there's no like really like this is like a NASA has a definition of life considering like Darwinian evolution and like homeostasis and stuff, but there's like too many, this is like one of the things we talked about most in this like seminar course for astrobiology that I was in last semester is that we don't know how to define life for real when we're actually considering what could be out there. So we don't know how to interact with it. And I think that's where it gets hard is the interaction part.
So what ethical approach would you take in making a decision on whether it's ethical to do that or not?
Um, I think that utilitarianism is the way to go because I make a basic pros and cons list, and I do think that the because this is such an idea of what could potentially happen. And when you're
Hmm.
talking about that, the contingencies far, far like outmeasure the like the awesomeness of what you could do, which is
Hmm.
sad, and I don't like that because I like want to take like the most optimistic view, but you really do have to be like that. Like NASA is like that, like they are careful for a reason, and we
Hmm.
should all be careful for a reason when we're like approaching this. Izzy, what do you think?
Well, I'm not as familiar with like the different like ways of going over ethics, but I would want something a little more like less like pros and cons because I feel like it's such a complex subject and it's talking about something outside of this world. And I feel like when we're talking about things in this world, that type of ethics may work for us, but it may not work for things outside of our own planet.
Hmm.
So I guess going back to you, which one would you say would be the one that for you to use?
To me?
Yes.
Well, I would agree with Ariel, in terms of the utilitarianism approach, because you really have to think about um, is what we're doing, do the benefits outweigh the harms? And while does seem more black and white, it does at least give you a framework for where to start kind of thinking about the ethics behind what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. I I also like Izzy, I love that because we have to like, have that humility as a human race and realize that things are like our perceptions are going to be so skewed and
Mhm.
like there's a big universe out there and we are a tiny, tiny, tiny part of it. So I really like that. Yeah. Um, our final sort of little bit here is going to be the question, what's the biggest challenge of teaching ethics to college age students? And sort of like some context for this question. Um, like we're kind of talking like implications here. Like what what implications might this answer have for like the effort to make entire societies aware of ethical approaches to situations and like in a perfect world everybody would be super ethical, but I mean, not going to happen. But as we progress as a human race.
Well, I think again, this is my personal opinion, as what we see every day, there's a lot of lacking of ethics in the way decisions are being made politically. And not to get into too much of a political discussion, but um, having more of a knowledge of what is ethical and does it make sense to do this may change the way decisions are made. Now, having said that, um, who are the future leaders of the country? It's you. So, where better to kind of impart some additional knowledge in terms of what ethics is and how ethics can be used than at the university level, so that you can then take that to heart when you're out there making decisions, whether you're in the workplace, or you're in government. And because a lot of students, when they come into my class, I'm sure think, well, how am I going to use this? Why am I going to use this? But I would challenge you to think about um, how much information is being captured about everybody all the time, wherever you're going, wherever you're shopping, whatever you're doing online. And the ethics of this, the ethics comes into, does it make sense to use the data? So location data that's being captured, wherever we are, you know, in doing multiple things. Um, the question is, do we violate privacy issues by using that data in even machine learning or predictive modeling? So the ethics comes into not only the collection of the data, but it's the use of the data. And I think, by the end of my course, hopefully students kind of have a different perspective as to how data can potentially also be abused if it's not used correctly.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really difficult considerations, very important considerations, and when everything it is so easy and convenient, um, where do you draw the line, you know? Izzy, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I'm trying to think of something. So give me one moment. I have a question like incoming. It's just
Okay.
No worries. Yeah, it's a the data that's all around us, it's like hard to remember how much data that there really is. That's one of the coolest things that I learned in this course. It's like
Yeah.
data is everywhere.
It's the data and the footprint that we're leaving
Mhm.
Yeah,
we're, with whatever we're doing.
yeah.
Did the did the question incoming?
Yes, yes. I was so you said like the two main components of like coming up with these ethical arguments is the collection of the data and then the distribution. Which would you say is, in your opinion, requires more of like okay, let's really like think like which requires more of like the ethical like what do you ha do you
No,
understand?
I know what you're saying.
Okay, okay,
It's
perfect.
it's not necessarily the collection because, excuse me, the data is being collected.
Yes.
The question is the use.
Mhm.
And I think that that's where the ethics comes in as to making a decision, should we use it? as opposed to if we, because they have it. All these companies that are collecting data, whether you're shopping, whether you're traveling, um, whatever, you're on the internet, your footprint is there. All the cookies that are getting that are collecting data every time you open a website, the footprint is there. So they're collecting it. Question is, are they then using it? And I think that that's where the ethics comes in, and that's where it's important for data scientists to understand, should we be using this data?
I think it's also really interesting how, like, the question is, we start with, should we be using it? Instead of starting with, how are we going to use it? But how is
Hmm.
still an important consideration.
Hmm.
But like it's kind of like backed all the way into like the wall of like we're starting our ethical questions from here and then we
Right,
you know
right.
because it's so like difficult to it's complicated.
It is. And it's easy to just, whatever data you're collecting, just go ahead and use it. But you have to think of what are the implications of using it. Are you creating bias in machine learning, modeling? Um, are you creating bias in predictive modeling?
Mm, yeah, that's scary. And
Hmm.
yes, that is like obviously like a consideration because we obviously see like large language models have like horrible bias and like been taught, just not correct things, not nuanced things. So it's super interesting.
I mean, and with the use of the advent of artificial intelligence, the artificial intelligence is only as good as the data that it's being trained on. So if you don't have a complete picture, you're already biasing the effect of AI.
Yeah, that's wild.
Hmm.
And like I mean even just like, we as, just individuals who might not be data scientists or anything, like we use data all the time. And
Hmm.
so, like this podcast is all about space and whatever, but honestly, like cool thing to sort of like take away from this episode is like you as an individual have ethical considerations to consider. You
Hmm.
have data to use, data to manipulate and create, and like particularly when interfacing with AI, like, how are you going to use that? How are you going to think about that?
And I think we all kind of need to think about the footprint that we're leaving when we're creating all this data, because these companies are collecting the data, but we're creating it. So you have to think about how you want to leave your footprint. Um, and once it's there, out of your control.
Yeah, scary.
Hmm. Yep.
Well, that's sort of the end of our questions. I think we had a very good conversation there.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Schneider, for joining us. Thank you to everybody who listened to this episode. We appreciate your viewership. Um, and yeah, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube and stuff like that. Share. It'd be really great. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna stop this recording and we will be seeing all of you again quite soon. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day.